Hello. So for this episode, I'm going to speak about a leadership book that we read in the Leadership Book Club this month. The book is called Inclusive Intelligence, and there was quite a bit of valuable information from the book. So I'll just start by giving a very general sense of the book. So the book is generally about inclusive intelligence. This is the intelligence that a leader needs to be more inclusive and effective within their work, and especially working with people from multiple different perspectives and experiences and identities. Now, generally the author wrote the book from a first person perspective and shares some of their own lived experiences of feeling excluded and included. Also, during the book club, we all agreed that the author wrote with a lot of graciousness towards people and understanding for why some people would be more inclusive than others, or some people wouldn't have known that their behaviour was somehow exclusionary. So I thought that was really lovely. Also, the author gave some really great examples of moments where they felt excluded and of these kind of like subtle things that can happen in the workplace but don't necessarily result in an inclusive experience for all. One of those examples was an experience that they had during Ramadan, and how something very subtle, which was well intentioned by the organisation, resulted in some of the organisation feeling very supported and cared for, but the author themselves feeling very excluded and forgotten. And I don't want to give it away. I want you to read the book. It is a book I'd recommend reading. I'd recommend reading it with the expectation to have a first person experience and to think about leadership through a different lens, maybe to what traditional leadership books are speaking about. A, because the author's own experience of leadership is different, but also B, because the author brings your attention to inclusive intelligence and how important that is. The parts that members of the group found particularly valuable was that the book was practical, very reflective. There's lots of coaching exercises and reflective exercises throughout the book, and some really practical inclusion things that you can do to assess your own inclusive intelligence. And what I liked about the book was that the author focused on the inclusion aspect rather than the diversity aspect, which meant that the author wasn't really telling you what to do or what's right and wrong, but instead was enhancing your critical thinking and your reflective practice and your ability to think about inclusion beyond just labels. The other things was that the way the author described certain phrases and the quotes that they use, that was loved by the book club. That way of communicating supported many of the readers. It's also something I particularly liked. The first person accounts that the author gave of their experience allowed you to connect to the story that was being shared, rather than sometimes how hard data is used to try and persuade change. It felt like the author was actually gifting us something while we read the book. It led to multiple other conversations and considerations for us, one of which was it brought about thinking about how religious identities and experiences are included and excluded in society without much thought. One of the prime examples is that in the West, a lot of the natural working year and holidays and bank holidays and celebrations are often around, more often than not, are around a Christian norm, which means that, for instance, you might be giving somebody Christmas Day off, but you may not be giving them a day off that their own religion supports. And I thought this was really interesting consideration, because while we're thinking about being inclusive, by the author sharing their story, the book club were able to discuss how that translates into other settings. And also another part that became really important during the discussions was that the author showed so much grace towards the learning process and kept reiterating that it's not just about whether you know the thing or not, but it's about taking care of the people that you're there to take care of and understanding the people that you're working with and having an awareness of that. The other thing that was pointed at during the book was that kind of balance between relationships, the task at hand, and time management. And it's something that in my own work I'm very aware of when I work with leaders, is that we want most people to function and perform at their best. But as soon as we overemphasize task and time, they're going to have to neglect people. And I think the author kind of pointed towards this and kind of gave us a sense that that was important during the book as well. Yeah, so that's kind of like generally the book itself. I would say it's a great read if you're looking to consider inclusion from a kind of a catch-all perspective, so inclusive intelligence. And also there was quite a bit around cultural wisdom and cultural intelligence in the book as well. And I think that that's something to consider. Sometimes our norms of good, bad, successful, rude, not rude are kind of overlooked. So I thought the book did really well at going to different points and introducing people to those different points. I would like to see some more research behind the book and backing it up, and I'd also have liked to have heard more of the explanations explained. What I don't know, because that wasn't the case, was if that would have then taken away from the first person account. And I do think that the first person account brought it to life in a really beautiful way, that I wouldn't want something to overshadow that. So as an enjoyable read, 5 stars. As an informative read, 5 stars. And centering the lived experience of somebody and using that to tell a story, 5 stars. From an academic point of view, I don't think it's robust enough, but I don't think that that's what the author was attempting. The author was attempting, from what I can see, to inform readers about inclusive intelligence, and I think they did that really well and introduced it in a very digestible, easy read, provocative way that got readers to think. And so I think it's a great book to read, especially if you feel a little uncomfortable around inclusion and you're not really sure what to do. I think it's a brilliant read for that type of reader. And it's something that it would be helpful for all leaders to at least have an overarching sense of. And so from my point of view, I think it's a great read. It's one you could probably do on holidays. I highly recommend doing the coaching and reflective activities because I think they brought the value to life. So it's not just a book about knowledge, it's a book about connection, relating to the importance of inclusive intelligence. And it's also a book about looking at yourself more deeply. And I think for all those reasons, I'd recommend the book. So Inclusive Intelligence, and there'll be a link in the description.